Choujin X is by the same author of Tokyo Ghoul, Sui Ishida. He's a phenomenal writer, and Choujin X has been a phenomenal story for the past handful of years. However, I want to tell you about one of my favorite characters from him, a villain of Choujin X, known as Sora. She has a lot going for her, and she fits into the pool of villainry that I really enjoy. Messy, complicated, all over the place individuals just trying to do their best. I want to tell you about her. If you've read Choujin X, that's great. If you haven't read Choujin X, even better. Because what I want from you is to decide whether you think she is a villain. From the limited information I will give you, there will be a point where you will decide if she is the villain. Also, if you enjoy the video and find yourself coming back on the regular, why not leave a like and subscribe? Sora is introduced into Choujin X as a young 17-year-old girl. She is a nun, and the world is currently on the brink of war. Sora has the power of divination, which means that she can see into the future. However, it's not incredibly accurate. There's some things she can see, some things she can't. It's not entirely clear or accurate, right or wrong, etc., etc. She's a kind girl that's very loving and supportive, thrown very rapidly into war. Now, during this war, she witnesses a very powerful being known as Queen. We're going to call him X. And anyone that harbors the title of X, Choujin X is the full title, is considered the most powerful being of the era. X is going to war. So while this war kicks off, Sora and all of her people are slaughtered. And within the death, destruction, and bodies of all of these innocent people, Sora awakens as a Choujin. But not just any Choujin. She awakes as the new Choujin X, someone that can eventually rival the wrath of Queen. From here, Sora is quick to rebel. She wants to protect this prefecture called Yamato Mori, and to do that, she has to repel Queen and his massive army who are invading into these other prefectures. It's a massive continent, and if Sora loses any of it, she's basically going to be overran by all different corners. Sora has a lot of things going for her though. At this point, she has awakened to Choujin X, which means her abilities are becoming more and more powerful, and she's able to use basically anything. Her powers are through the roof, and while inexperienced compared to Queen, who is a military general, she has the utmost determination to not only save this prefecture, save this place that means so much to her, but also do right by her friends and family and people that were killed at her wayside. Sora is destructive. She is incredibly brilliant in her approach to war fighting. She's intelligent and forthcoming and really showcases what the true new era Choujin X is capable of. She manages to take in very powerful underlings, someone like Vlad and even a certain clan that are also such incredible people that completely decimate the battlefield in front of them. This war would go on for quite some time, with Sora eventually repelling this massive invasion. But it would come at some pretty interesting costs. Ones that would slowly play into her sanity, her appreciation for life, and overall a emotional down spiral into the unknown. Sora was never realistically evil. She never had a reason to be evil till she had some sort of vision. Somewhere within her vision, she's seen a future of utter death and destruction that she called the Dark Calamity. But she did not know where it comes from, what it means, who is it, how do we stop it? Within her fear and her power, she would do everything to try and stop it. However, people didn't agree with her. While she is the savior, a hero of Yamato Mori, the people look up to her as a god. There was a divide. Another person with divination powers, able to see the future and arguably a little bit more clearly, did not know anything about a dark calamity. They didn't think it was possible. They thought Sora was losing her mind. And after what seemed like probably years of back and forth, they exiled Sora from the land that she saved. They pushed her out and all of her followers to a secluded tower where she would remain for all of her days. There's important information that I've left out. Sora is a drug addict and not a easy one. See, when it comes to Choujin abilities, you have the ability to raise, and to put it in simplest terms, if you're taking a lot of damage that is life-threatening, you can do a thing called raise, which basically refreshes your body, heals everything, and you're good to go fighting again. However, there is a downside to raising. You can only really do it a couple of times, depending on the injury, and the more you do it, you start to lose control. Sounds similar to Tokyo Ghouls with the Kaganes and half Kagages, etc., right? So let's say that you take a life-threatening injury. You raise once, you're perfectly fine, you're good to go. You take another life-threatening injury, you raise twice, and you're a little bit weaker and you're starting to tweak out just a little bit. You take another injury, and the third time you try to raise, you lose control, and this is where you go into a chaos state. It's also called chaosification, which this state goes two ways. One, while you're out of control, perhaps you can walk back from it. You can try and slide out of the chaos state and survive the transformation by someone knocking you out of it, doing enough damage, etc., doing their best to reel you back from the brink of insanity. The other direction is kind of permanent. You either get stuck in a chaos state entirely, not sure on what you are or who you are, or you basically die. During the war with Sora, she went into a lot of chaos states because there was so much fighting and so much death and so much destruction. There was many times that she would have to raise over and over and over again, and she would use chaosification many different times. Kind of normal. However, to offset this type of raise, because she couldn't raise as frequently because of all the injuries she was taking alongside everybody else, they started to use drugs. Opium, to be specific. So opium would allow her to enhance her fighting capabilities by continuing to raise without the consequences, or so she thought. She wasn't the only people doing this. Queen and his army also done this. Everyone else was doing it. It was a way to get the upper hand, but it was also a way to stop Queen from doing it. If Queen didn't have poppy fields, which is opium, then Sora could have them, and this would put a massive disadvantage at Queen and his army, because now Sora had his supplies and could use them herself. Turns out she got addicted, and when the war ended, she was still using opium, which kind of took this dark calamity, divination, future, severity into obscurity because people didn't believe her because one, she was a drug addict, and two, she was kind of losing her mind. So she was stuck in this chaos state, and being the most powerful being of this era, known as Choujin X, she kind of just sat in this tower in a completely ugly chaos state, not really sure on how to get out of it. She had a plan though, and it was to pass on her powers to another person, which brings in our main characters, Tokyo, Azuma, and Iole. However, there was a problem. This mark of the beast that Sora wanted to pass on could only be passed to Beast successfully, at least theoretically, and Beast children were of her own creation. So basically of her bloodline or her power line, so to speak. And throughout Choujin X's story, you see that process kind of unravel itself in really interesting ways. Unfortunately, if the wrong person were to take the mark of the beast, because it wasn't a simple endeavor to ingest that much power, they could die. So Sora, over all of these years trying to pass on her powers successfully, ended up killing a lot more innocent people. Now mind you, this is in a drugged out state. She's constantly high off opium, she's scared of this dark calamity, she's pushed out of the place that she saved and no longer called a hero, she's called a monster, and just sits in this tower all day waiting for something to happen, until it does. Our main characters, Tokyo, Iole, and Azuma, are somewhat compassionate to the blight of Sora, and instead of demonizing her as this horrific killer, Tokyo is interested in hearing her out, hearing her side of the story, what she was so afraid of, what she's seen that no one else did, and what she'd done to save this country and her people. When you see the bigger picture of Sora, what she originally was capable of, what she has turned to now, it is such a pitiful state. Yet you can't help but feel bad for her. What she's gone through, what she's experienced prior being an awakened Choujin to suddenly turning into one and then fighting a war against one of the most powerful beings to walk the earth. Mind you, dealing with that much death and destruction and trauma, you're a monster. stuck inside a cage, amplified continuously by the emotional attributes of chaosification, the inability to raise and control your healing abilities so you can't revert from this ugly state that you're within, and then the opium usage. You're a drug addict that's constantly using drugs and going into withdrawal and having these massive mood swings, mental and emotional breakdowns. It's hard to really feel bad for her when she's not the person to put herself in this position. She tried so desperately to save so many people, to be this hero, and while she accomplished it, there's statues of her, there's people that praise her for doing what she done. They did not think that she was safe, and they could not risk the gamble of a Choujin X going out of control. One of the most humanizing aspects I really love about Sora is that she's willing to talk. While she is still easily one of the most powerful beings to exist and can wipe even the powerful characters in the story instantly, she talks to people. And when you talk to Sora, while she doesn't really make sense because you don't get context, when you start to piece the pictures together, when you start to figure out what she's trying to do and what she's trying to avoid, really she's just scared of a future that is genuinely coming. The dark calamity can be real, and she wants to stop that. And while those steps may seem obsessive, you can't necessarily blame her. Even though technically Sora is the villain of Choujin X's story, she feels way more human than anyone else within it. Mostly because she's experienced so much over her lifespan that just is horrifying to deal with. A lot of the way that Ishida portrays the type of trauma that Sora has is so intricate and delicate to her character. Yet she'll never talk about it, she'll never explore it, she'll never really understand it because it's all completely masked over by this chaos state where she can't really regulate anything. She's not mean or abusive, but she's not as kind as she originally was. She's a very smart woman that's drugged out by opium and in a position that can't really face herself. Throughout the story of Choujin X, you don't get a lot of detail for her. What I've told you is a mix of factual bits and pieces of information lengthened out with my own interpretation. I do easily think that Sora is one of Ishida's best characters, and the journey that she has is fascinating to see unravel. Someone so broken and torn and caged within this horrifying fate that she can't escape from. That desperation, that pitifulness, the way Ishida handles that type of sensitivity every single time you see her, she looks miserable and gross. It's such a miserable, beautiful way to approach a character like her that you just become addicted to it. You want to see more and more of what she is. And the payoff for her is worth it. For the Choujin X readers, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and for the non-Choujin X readers, I hope anything in here gets you to go and read it. If it sounds even just a little bit exciting to figure out where Sora goes as a character and what she is capable of, please do go and read it.